Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome back to the Operation Heal 100 Hearts channel where we do what? Focus on healing, humor, and hot motherfucking topics. I already know what y'all nosy is here for, the same thing I'm here for. So let's get into it. Let's do this Dear DJ letter. But before we do so, ladies and gentlemen, please go hit the thumbs up on this video. Please go hit the thumbs up on this video. Please go hit the thumbs up on this video. That's your free way of supporting my channel, getting me out in the algorithm, and helping your girl get lit because I'm here providing this good old content. Let's get to it with your nosy ass. Dear Deja, at 17 and a half years old, I gave birth to my son. This young man is the light of my life. Sorry, y'all. The best decision I've ever made in my life, even though everyone around me was trying to tell me becoming a mom before I actually became an adult was going to be a decision I will regret for the rest of my life. Now the joy of my world is in Zion. Go on, girl. However, his father and I were smitten with one another, so having our son was a no-brainer. My son's dad played college football and was well on his way to the NFL draft when he was run over by a car. The accident caused a spinal cord injury, nerve damage, and eventually paralysis. Deja, it's been a long road and an incredible journey nonetheless. But my son's dad is alive and he's a full-time father and partner. We are blessed. For a long time, there was a struggle because his dreams of playing in the NFL were, of course, crushed. But he found some solace when my son started showing signs of possibly becoming an athlete at around 4 years old. My baby adores his dad, so initially I feel like my son loved the bonding time and admiration his father showed him whenever he won a game or played his little heart out. I could see at around 12 years old, my son started to shift. His passion for sports started dwindling, but his father was oblivious because he has high hopes for our baby boy. I tried to make him aware that our son might be interested in something aside from sports, and he said no, he's just getting older and lazy. We have to keep him focused. What I saw was that my son is at an age where his sexual desires are starting to peak and he's figuring himself out. At 15 years old, he finally figured out, and so did I. My son is gay. I was aware at 12 years old. Dad was oblivious until last week. There's another young man on the football team who our son will practice with in his downtime or during their off season. My son wants to spend so much time with him because they're attracted to one another. While my son was away at football camp, his dad had cameras installed in the home and he can watch the house when we're not home. My son came home with his friend that he practices with. They went in the kitchen and made something to eat, went in the living room to watch a movie, and eventually started making out. His dad is watching the entire interaction on his phone from the cameras. He lost his mind, and when we returned home, the way he verbally annihilated my son left us both in a puddle of tears. My son and I have been at his grandparents' house ever since. I am so angry with my son's dad, but then there's a part of me that's so hurt for him and my son. I know I chose a side when I left with my son, but I'm honestly stuck in the middle. What do you think I should say or do? I would love to hear your input and advice. Sign, this can get better if we get through it together. Wow, 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 wow. Y'all know me. I have to take my good old sip. Ooh, child. Well, number one on the list, I really, really love the way you signed your letter. I love the way you signed your letter, which is this can get better if we get through this together, right? Because I also believe that you guys need to come together as a family and try to find some resolve. First off, let me say I'm so sorry to hear about your son's dad's injury, because that has to be horrific. And like you said, I could imagine that it was a journey trying to, get things back in formation and get him back acclimated. And also you guys adjusting to a whole new world because now you're dealing with his paralysis. So I really, really, really want to send you guys well wishes in regards to that incident, because I can't imagine, what you guys were going through when that took place. But it seems like that was long ago, and that's pretty much, not to say behind you, but you pretty much have your feet on solid ground, and you guys are moving and shaking with that. And like you said, he's found joy in knowing that, he can live out his dreams through his son, and so on and so forth. Of course, I think that you should play neutral, because at the end of the day, you're not against either one of them. That is your partner and that is your son. And you guys are all a family. So number one on the list, you should definitely play neutral. I don't think you leaving with your son necessarily represented you taking a side. I think that you could see that the way he, as you said in your letter, verbally annihilated your son was a tad bit, let me not even say a tad bit, was too much for your son to bear. And because he had the upper hand in that situation, you just wanted to show your son some support. It was nothing wrong with that. It was nothing wrong with that. It was nothing wrong with providing that support and that comfort for your son, because in that moment he wasn't getting it from the other parent, right? So I think you did the right thing by leaving with your son and going to comfort him and make sure he was okay, because clearly he wasn't the one getting hurt here and he wasn't the one doing the hurting, right? In a sense, right? I think if your son's dad knows you well, then he knows that you're not necessarily picking a side. I think he understands that. I do think that if he knows you well, he will understand that you're angry. You're angry because even if you did feel a way about our son's sexual preference and so on and so forth, to verbally disrespect him the way that you did is a tad bit too much for our kid. And I'm pretty sure that he knows you and he's aware that you may have some feelings surrounding that because you're his mom. You know, any mother would, right? So I don't think that the dad is upset at you at all. I think, like what you said in the letter, the dad is hurt, right? He's hurt because he envisioned a lifestyle for his son and that wasn't a part of what he envisioned, right? What I think you should do initially is go talk to dad. You and dad just need to sit down and talk. And my thing is, I think that you and dad probably should have talked in a ride home back to the house before he got there to verbally annihilate your son, to maybe talk him down a little bit. Because during that time, you could have made him understand how irrational it was for him to go and just start barking on your son over his sexual preference. Because at the end of the day, that's your baby, and no matter what, you want them to know you love and accept them. But if I come in cursing you out and berating you with insults because of your sexual preference, automatically I don't feel accepted. I don't feel loved. I don't feel comforted in this space. So I think the conversation probably should have happened on the way to the house after he saw what he saw on the camera. But again, that's water under the bridge. I think now is the opportunity for you to be like, listen, me and you need to sit down and talk. Right? Me and you need to sit down and talk. And the number one thing I think you need to bring up before you even go into your son is, I think you need to talk with your son's father about his thought process and his expectations. Because the issue here is not that your son did anything wrong. The issue here is that your husband, or your son's dad, you didn't call him your husband, has placed some expectations on your son that's totally unfair. It's totally unfair. Everybody in this life gets to live the life that they envision for themselves. They don't have to live a life that somebody else envisions for them. And I know sometimes that's hard for parents to digest, because it's like, listen, this is my kid. I want the best for them. I know what's best for them. I understand that you think you do. But as kids get older, they start to become young adults, and they start to figure out what's best for themselves. And sometimes that doesn't look like what the parents had in mind. And I understand for parents that's an incredibly hard pill to swallow. I get it. Because at the end of the day, I know my kid. I know what's best. I've been there every step of the way, and I can foresee what might happen. So I'm going to protect. I get all of that. But what I don't think that your son's dad gets is that he's placing some unrealistic expectations on your son for the way his life is supposed to be, and that's not fair. It's not at all fair to your son. Because if he's sitting around constantly trying to live up to what somebody else sees him as or wants him to be, he would never 100% fulfill that commitment. So every time he falls short, he will feel like he's not good enough. And you don't want to send your kid out in the world with that low self-esteem and that not feeling like they're good enough mindset, because it will bleed out into every relationship they have and every situation that they're in. Right? So let's start there. You need to be talking to him about, listen, what's up with you? Which I also feel like you should be having a conversation with your son's dad about getting some therapy regarding his accident. Because it sounds like, from what you said in your letter, yes, he was very sad, very depressed when he had his accident. And then, he started to cheer up and perk up when your son started to show some interest in sports. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but at the end of the day, again, he's making his happiness contingent upon somebody else. when he really should have been trying to find his own happiness within. And maybe he needs some therapy to do that, because that's the real issue here. The real issue is his happiness is contingent upon his son, your son. And because your son is not fulfilling that, that's a void for him. And now he's having an issue which made him act out the way that he did. Right? So I think when you go to talk to your husband, I'm going to call him that, even whether he is or not, because I can't keep saying something like that. I think you should go and talk to your husband and, you know, figure out, do you need some therapy? You know, do you need some help managing your feelings and emotions surrounding who you are in this new phase of your life, which is you're a paraplegic. Like, you know what I'm saying? So the reality of that is that's your new life. Can you find a way to be happy with that? That's not contingent upon me or your son. You have to find your own happiness, because it's not fair to place that on me or him, because that's too much of a burden for your son or you to have to bear, right? So I think initially going to talk to him about himself before you even get to your son, right? The second part about that is too, let's just say now we're going into the conversation about your son. You don't even have to say anything about sports. I mean, about his sexual orientation or preference. You can talk about playing sports. Just because your son is gay does not mean that he can't play sports. If he is still interested and that's something that he wants to do, one doesn't have to have anything to do with the other, right? So I don't work where I work because I'm a heterosexual woman. No, I work where I work because I have a skill set that accommodates me and helps me do my job, and it makes me feel good to want to do what I do. That has nothing to do with my sexual preference or orientation. Right? So I think the issue here is also your son's dad may have thoughts in his head in regards to what a football player looks like. They're masculine, they're heterosexual. Not always. Not all men in sports are heterosexual. That's the reality of the situation. So that's another conversation you can have before you even get to your son sexual preference, is that what does that have to do? If you're excited about him wanting to play sports and he wants to play sports, what's the issue here? But the issue is not about the sports, and the issue is not about your son. The issue is, if I'm being honest, the issue is about your son's dad's mindset surrounding his sexuality. And that's a very, very deep and real conversation that you guys need to have. You know, I know sometimes people can feel like if they don't tease homosexuals, or if they don't antagonize homosexuals, or if they don't give homosexuals attention, then they're not homophobic, right? And I beg to differ, because sometimes people can make comments or have certain thoughts that are negative towards homosexuals that can expose the fact that they are homophobic. Some people just may not be openly or blatantly homophobic, right? And the fact that he is comparing the two, which is sports and sexuality, I'm not going to say he's homophobic, but he gets to pick and choose what that sounds like. And I think you have to lay that out for him. You have to lay it out for him. If our son is attracted to men, that's one thing, right? If our son plays sports, that's another. One does not have to have anything to do with the other, unless you already have what you view as what a football player should look like, which they should be heterosexual. That's not always. But I think that if your son's dad overheard on TV that a football player came out as gay, he would have some homophobic slurs to say. He would have an issue with it. He would have some feelings surrounding it. And I think that's why he doesn't want that for your son. Because he knows that the same feelings that are within him are within other people. And he doesn't want anybody looking at your son a particular way if he's playing sports and he's possibly gay. And the bottom line is, people are going to look at your son because he's a black man. The way I read this, you guys are black. So he's going to be looked at and viewed and judged off that alone. You know, at the end of the day, what his sexual preferences shouldn't matter to anybody. And if it does, who gives a fuck? But I'm going to tell you who gives a fuck. His dad. His dad. Will I say that, because this is a lot of the conversation surrounding homosexuality too. You know, some folks are like, listen, I don't got no issue with it. I don't mind it. It don't have nothing to do with me as long as it's over there. So your son, and your son could be gay, but I don't want that for mine. That may be what your son's dad feels. Unfortunately, he does not get to call the shots when it comes to anyone else's life but his own. And while I get that he would not like for your son's sexual preference to be men, if that's what it is, at some point he will either have to learn to accept it or reject it. And the only way for him and your son to continue having a father-son relationship is if he accepts him for who he is. And these are the things that you need to lay out for him. Because at the end of the day, it's no way not to have a tumultuous relationship with your son if he does not accept him for the man that he eventually will become and is right now. Which is, at this point, his sexual preference is men. What's the issue there? And you can ask him things like, you know, let me ask, if our son's sexual preference is men, does that make him any less of a football player? Does it make him any less athletic? Does it take out any muscle mass? Does he run any slower if he's gay? What is the problem with him wanting to play sports and also being attracted to men? But I think that he might argue back from what your letter said, right? I think he might argue back that him being gay does have an effect on him wanting to play sports, because you said that in your letter he started losing interest in playing sports at about maybe 12 years old. So I think what dad will argue back is, now that you're a homosexual, you don't want to play sports anymore. You just want to be a homosexual, right? And again, I've heard these ignorant conversations up and down, in and out. So I'm just giving it back to you how it could come out, so you can be prepared to have rebuttals for when these things start to get said, right? And then I think you should say to him, if that's your feeling, right? Because that's only an assumption. He hasn't shared that with you. We need to sit down and talk to our son. We need to sit down and talk to our son. Because number one on the list, it's a huge issue with the fact that the son didn't feel comfortable just coming and sharing that anyway. I'm pretty sure if your son was interested in women, he would have had no issue saying, Dad, I like this girl. I think that he knew it would be some pushback and there would be some shame and guilt attached to him liking men. So he was keeping it away from you guys. What else is he keeping from you? I remember a friend of mine told me a story, right? And it really got me to thinking differently about parenting, right? She said to me, Deja, you know one of the things that I love, right? She said, when anything happens with my son, I am the first person he calls, good, bad, or indifferent. Whenever anything happens, if he's in trouble, anything, he'll say, let me call my mom, right? And I thought about that because when I was younger and growing up, I never wanted my mom to know I was doing anything wrong, and I was too in fear of my dad knowing. So I never wanted to call them first. It's either A, I'm figuring things out on my own, or I'm calling one of my peers. I never wanted to call my parents first when I was in trouble. Right? And when she shared that with me, it really got me to thinking about when I become a parent myself. I would like to be that type of parent. I would like to be the type of parent that my kid trusts me so much, and my kid knows that I'm going to have their back and protect them so much that when anything is going on in their life, whether I'm going to look at them good, bad, up, down, in, out, they still have the comfort and the longing to want to tell me first. So to know that your kid was keeping a secret so big from you is an even bigger deal than who he's sexually attracted to. And that's a conversation as a family you guys should be having. You could get to the sexual preference later. Sure, the sexual preference may change. Who knows? But the fact that he was hiding that from you that suggests that there is something wrong within this family unit. And he wasn't just hiding it from dad. Mom, he was hiding it from you too. So this is a conversation that needs to be brought to the forefront about secrets within this family. But before you can have this conversation, Mom, you need to get dad to come around to understanding that he has to accept his son for whoever he is. Or he has to accept the dismantling of the relationship because he doesn't. And if he's prepared to lose his son because of his son's choices, then so be it. My question would be, Mom, since you're the letter writer, where does that leave you? As the mother who is the partner of this man and is the mother of this boy, if they decide to part ways, right? If he decides to dismantle this relationship because of his sexual preference, Mom, where does that leave you? And I know you said you don't want to pick a side, but I think it's going to come to a point where you have to, unless you can bring your husband around to understanding that no matter what, we have to love and accept our son. Even if he isn't growing up and living his life the way we wanted or envisioned him to. You know why? Because that's okay. Everybody has the right to live up to their own standards and live their life the way they see fit. Nobody has to try to live up to anybody else's standards, because you will continuously fall short, and you will continuously try, and you will continuously fall short, and after a while you will develop this self-esteem issue that keeps whispering in your ear, you're not good enough, because you never met another person's standards. Have your own. And that's what he should be instilling in your son, man to man. It's okay to be yourself, even if nobody accepts that. So, my dear, this sounds like an Operation Hill 100 Hearts family session. This sounds like a family session. I would love to assist you guys if that's what you want. I am praying for you guys, because I don't know any mother that wants to be stuck between her spouse and her child, so hopefully you guys will be able to come to a middle ground. And if you need me, I'm here. If you need me, I am absolutely here to do the work individually with your young person, individually with you, with the family as a whole, individually with your spouse. Whatever you guys need, I'm here. In any event, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. Please don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video and make sure to enjoy your lovely day.